Okay, and now we're going to have that 15-second delay that Facebook is so famous for as we stream over to meet our mighty mystery friends and fam. We've had questions pouring in all week for you, and I can't wait to get to them. So it looks like we are live. Welcome, mighty mystery friends, family, and fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am absolutely thrilled to be hosting a very special celebrity edition with the Queen of Mysteries herself, Patricia Cornwell, on the night before her brand new book, Spin, comes out. Patricia, welcome to A Mighty Place. Tell us about Spin.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. Well, I want to do for space technologies and things, with space travel, what I did for the forensic world, which is take things that people don't know much about and don't think they necessarily apply to them, and then I show you what it's all about. And yes, indeed, it does apply to you more every single day that you live and breathe. That what's going on up there in space applies to you. So somebody had said, what if you were going to basically do a thriller series today instead of scarpetta, what would you do? And I thought, well, I would go to NASA. And so I began doing research like that. And Captain Chase, the main character, she has an identical twin. She's a quantum physicist. And both she and her sister unknowingly, in many ways, have been groomed since the time they were born to be the modern space defenders, what we call today the Guardians in Space Force. And this involves all kinds of technologies, bionic interfaces where you with humans, not turning people into cyborgs, but just really cool technologies that make these characters able to do things that are going to be a little bit unusual that you'll see soon enough. But in addition to that, Captain Chase is also a cyber investigator, what Space Force and NASA call cyber ninjas. And to give you a good example of why we need these people, look at the big hacking that's going on in this country right now. I mean, and even when there are these protests and riots and horrific things that are being planned through social media and other ways, it's the cyber ninjas that are out there mining all this in the invisible world so that we can know what the heck is going on, not to mention what's going on up there with satellites. So that's just a quick little taste of what you're about to see.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited because I love everything that you said. It's so exciting. My blood is pumping. I'm sweating a little bit, but it's so exciting. And I love how what you said about making it relevant to all of us and giving us that very clear example. This does affect everyone. And here's how. I think that's absolutely incredible. It makes it even that much more exciting. So thank you for that tantalizing introduction. So we have had questions pouring in all week for you. And so I want to get right into those. So first of all, I should welcome everybody on Facebook. Welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Hello, everybody.
Yay! If you've been here before, you know how it works. And if you're new, welcome. This is how it works. This is your chance to have access to our featured celebrity author, Patricia Cornwell herself, and to ask her anything about her writing process, her incredible stellar career, whatever you would love to ask her. You can type it right in the questions and we will get to them. And meanwhile, I'm going to start with the questions that already came in early. The first from Dr. Marcia Bucktenica Croyle. She would like to know, does your knowledge of what medical examiners do come from your own experience or your research?
Well, that's a very good question. And the answer is both, because I started out as a journalist and my first real beat was the police beat. That's how I got into all this. And whenever the medical examiner would show up at a homicide scene, the body would be whisked away and I'd never hear anything and no one would answer the phone. And I always wondered what goes on in the morgue. So later, when I decided, this was a long time ago, that I wanted to try my hand at writing books about crime. I never read a mystery or anything. I was not literate in that way, but so I had to go out and buy a bunch of books and try to learn. But when I decided to do that, I wanted to see what the medical examiners are doing. And I found somebody to introduce me to someone, and I got into, quote, the morgue. I'm the only person you'll meet who begs to go get into the morgue. Most people don't want to be there for any reason. But back then, this was 1984, the first time I went to the morgue. And so nobody was writing about that. You had that old show Quincy, that was about as close as anything got. And so I said, I'm going to start researching this. And the best way to learn is go work somewhere. So I kind of finagled my way into doing volunteer stuff. And then I got a job there, and every single day I'd be down during the autopsies, but I was running their computer statistical programs and stuff. But I did it to learn, and it was 6 years of that. So what I say to people, if you want to write, I don't care how you might write the most beautiful poetry in the world, but find a story, and you don't have to go out in the real world right now to do it. There is so much on the internet. You know, NASA says too much data is almost as bad as having none, because there's so much out there to find that you don't know where to look. But trust me when I tell you, like in spin, every one of these technologies, these seemingly space age technologies, you know, like shape shifting and invisibility cloaks, or smart glasses that I called peeps, and smart contact lenses that I called spies, or the systemic injectable network, which is all these sensors that are downloading data and helping control biological things to make you a better guardian of space, shall we say. All of this, you can Google it. If you Google the Dream Chaser space plane that Captain chased, her souped up version of it, you'll see a picture of it on the internet. It's a real thing. The same with the gun that they use, which is a Bond. With the name Bond, you would think I made that up because of James Bond. Nope, that's a real something too. I mean, you just go ahead, go to town. It's all out there. There's so much great stuff out there for stories to be told.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. And I love how you're just a self-starter, do-it-yourself, learn as you go person. That's how I learned too. And I think that's fantastic. Patricia, you are known for your incredibly detailed, thorough research. How long did it take you to research spin?
Well, I started researching all of this 4 years ago, so it's been a work in progress. And yes, it was about as intense as the morgue. I mean, I've traveled to, it's a good thing this was before the pandemic, because a lot of the things that I got to do, I would not be able to do right now, like going into Johnson Space Center and trying on a spacesuit, or using their Argos, their computerized system where you're in a harness and it mimics microgravity, so you're floating, and what that feels like, and or going up in the zero gravity plane with the parabolic trajectories that cause you to be weightless at times and floating like that. All of these, and going to Kennedy Space Center, going up in the vertical launcher, going into the crew quarters where the astronauts are before they're going up there. All of this stuff you couldn't be doing in the middle of a pandemic. So fortunately, I've gotten a lot of the heavy lifting out of the way. And like these people I'm just talking to about doing things remotely, now I'm writing a book right now, and I'm doing all the research remotely.
Wow. And I love when you post pictures of your research on your Instagram and your Twitter. I love seeing you out in the field looking at things and researching things. It's such a cool behind the scenes sneak peek. So everyone needs to follow Patricia. I'm sure everyone is, but everyone needs to follow her because she is just so fantastic.
I don't have any new exciting photos to post anymore. You know, we have our mask selfies, and the rest of the time it's blasts from the past. Pretty soon I'll be resorting to all of my baby pictures because I'm gonna run out of stuff. People will really be bored.
No, we love those throwback Thursdays and the flashback Fridays. Crystal Shea is saying she loved Quincy. So thank you for that, Crystal. This next question is from Gian Darty. She's actually a friend of mine, and she is the founder of the Boston-based award-winning skincare company, Organic Bath. She's not only an entrepreneur, she is a Black female entrepreneur in Boston, just killing it. She says she is a huge fan of yours. She's been reading you for years, and she said your characters are so rich. How do you flesh them out? Kay Scarpetta, Pete Marino, Kay's niece, Lucy. Give us some insight, Patricia.
Well, again, this is a writing tip, but it's really should be a human nature, or just, a tip in general. You can't have rich characters unless you're really interested in people and you want to know, because really everything is about what does it feel like to be you? What does it feel like to be you? If you're a medical examiner, an astronaut, a quantum physicist, or it could a school teacher, it could be, or a journalist, or somebody like me. It could be anybody, but we've got to care. It's called having empathy. And, and the empath, you would almost put your hands on somebody and you're feeling their pain, so to speak. I've got to feel your pain, baby, or I can't write a good character. It's not just what makes you happy. I got to know what makes you hurt. Like what gets to the grist of the mill with a medical examiner, or someone who's going to have to go up into space like Captain Chase does at the end of the book. And she goes, whoa, 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 how's this happening so fast? Well, you've been training for it all your life. You just didn't know it. In fact, you're the one that invented a lot of this stuff that you're getting ready to do. And so off we go. But again, what does that feel like to be heard, to be that scared and have the bang, bang, and all these things going off as the rockets, taking off. And so that is how I think I'm able to do it. But again, you cannot understand what it is to be somebody if you don't walk in their shoes. So you got to look into whatever it is they're due. If you can't show up in person, then get on the internet, or if you get a chance, meet somebody remotely, Zoom with them, talk to somebody. That's what I've always done.
Oh, I love that, Patricia. And I love what you said about you. It's not just about what they hope for, it's about what makes them hurt. I mean, wow. So would you say that getting in there, in addition to that curiosity, that human curiosity, that empathy, is it probing questions? Do you ask them what makes you hurt? What are you scared of? Or how do you get to the hurt?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I started out as a journalist, because I learned how to interview people. And that is all I do for a living, really, is I interview people. Even with this research for the Captain Chase books for Quantum, and now this one, Spin, I have real people out there that do this, whether it's a homicide investigator or a Secret Service cyber investigator who also works at the CIA, or astronauts, or people that are the cyber ninjas that can take spectrum analyzers and they can tell you everything that's going on in this room right now, and that, somebody's spying on you, as a matter of fact. So if you are resourceful, you will figure out how to get the information, but you don't have to ask a great list of questions, as much as you just try to listen and try to get in that person's airspace, and they will surprise you with what they will reveal that gives you character and story ideas. I'll never forget when I was working in the morgue and seeing the most horrendous things that these people put up with every day, and you can't cry in the morgue. I mean, you're not helping anybody if you cry at a crime scene or at the morgue. And so you never see anything like that with this great stoicism. But one night I was out at the theater with a medical examiner, and there was a violent scene on the stage, and she abruptly got up and walked out. And I got up and followed her out. Her husband said, "Will you go check on her?" Because we didn't know what was going on. When I got out in the parking lot, she was out by the car and she was sobbing. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "People just don't understand. They just don't understand. This is real." She couldn't look at that, because if you've seen rape homicides, if you've seen this stuff, and I have trouble with that kind of thing too. And so you've got to figure out what's traumatized people, also what gives them joy. And you don't know that unless you get to know them. And look, there's so much good that can come out of this time right now, as awful as it is. It's a time you can get to know people better, because you can do it remotely, and you might find some real treasures and some new insights. And some of the greatest inventions and creations of all time have happened in periods just like this. Sir Isaac Newton came up with the laws of physics right after, when he was sheltered in place during a pandemic. I guess he had time to watch the apple fall from the tree, right? And then T.S. Eliot wrote The Wasteland, the greatest poem ever written, after he had just gotten over the Spanish flu, over 100 years ago. And, won a Pulitzer Prize. If you haven't read The Wasteland, oh my God, April is the cruelest month. It's one of the most magnificent things I have an original copy that's signed by him. That's how much I love it. He didn't sign it for me while I was here. I'm not that old yet, but I'm getting close.
No. Oh my gosh, I love that. Looking at this as an opportunity to get to know people better, and to learn their experience, and to cultivate that empathy and that compassion through sharing their experience on the pages. Patricia,
You can't go anywhere. You can create. That's how I learned to do what I did. I had a lot of times where I could not stand the world I was living in as a kid. So I retreated into my imagination. And even if I was not allowed to leave the house, I would go somewhere. Oh, yes, I would. And I still do.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Oh, you're filling my heart, and you're getting so many hearts on Facebook.
Thank you.
They're
Well,
just going
hearts
up and
back.
just going up. They're
You
just,
see this I got on? I got my old scarpetta patch on just for all you guys out there. See that?
yay, your scarpetta patch. I love that. Thank you for wearing that for us. This next question from Laura Rossi, who's another Blaze volunteer and an incredible independent book publicist. And she says, Patricia, what do you love to read? She is so curious.
I read a lot of different things. I love nonfiction, and I love really good biographies. And again, if you read about some people like Queen Victoria or Cleopatra or Socrates, these people were way ahead of their time, and they were talking about scientific things. I mean, Socrates back in, I guess, about 300 something BC, long ago, he described what the world looked like from above. Now, we have this report from Plato because Socrates never wrote anything down, but Plato was his faithful retainer. And what Plato said was that Socrates described Earth as looking like one of those balls that the athletes use, that it's sewn together of different colored patches of leather. Now, please tell me how he could know that. No mountaintop you could ever climb is high enough to show you what the world looks like, probably from about the space station or a little lower. So what is that about? And so there are verses in the Bible that make you wonder about rockets. When Elisha goes up in a whirlwind of fire, what does that mean? So if you start opening your mind to all of this, I tell you, you're going to love it. And this is a good time to do it while we got to hole up, and let's make ourselves bigger and better while we're at it.
Yes to that. Let's make ourselves bigger and better. And I've always wondered about how people, before they had technology, Da Vinci sketching out helicopters. Hundreds of years before anyone was thinking about helicopters, but we have his sketches. How did he know these things? How did Socrates know what outer space looked like?
There are paintings that go back to the Middle Ages that depict flying saucers and things. Like, what is that about? I don't know, but I don't have any trouble believing I can't imagine we're the only thing that there is. We just keep discovering more and more planets constantly. You remember when we were growing up, it was just our solar system, with Pluto being the supposed, farthest reach. Now that's a joke. That's just your backyard. That's just the driveway where the mailbox is.
Poor Pluto has been demoted to mailbox status.
I know Pluto's not happy about that, and I don't.
He's not even a planet anymore. Poor jerk. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Now we're talking about all these other solar systems. It is incredible. It's an incredible time to be alive. Patricia, this next question from Alex Scrivens would like to know, how have you managed to keep up motivation to research and write during this pandemic? Has research been harder? Have more doors been closed to you?
Research would be harder if I had to go do the on-site visits that I did for Quantum and Spin, because I would not be going up. I would probably not be traveling, start with that. And a lot of the campuses, the NASA campuses, NASA Langley, it's closed. There's nobody, only essential workers, like really mission essential workers, like those people who are dealing with the space station and rocket launches and that kind of stuff. Otherwise, scientists are at home. So I wouldn't be watching much in the wind tunnels and watching, models of the Dragon or some other spacecraft being dropped from the gantry into the splash basin or on the dirt. All these really cool things that I've gotten to see, but I have a good database of it now. And if have at least some idea of what you're interested in, I'm telling you, there's so much information out there. And NASA, they have 100 years of data. So trust me, there's 100 years, and the government is fast and furiously declassifying a lot of these UFO reports and things like that. So things are getting mighty interesting. So I don't know, all you authors sitting around there, maybe you can't go anywhere, but if you were on a spaceship right now, you couldn't either. But you could find out all kinds of stuff, and you could write a really cool book.
Ooh, you heard it here first. Patricia Cornwell's dishing the gems and dropping gems and dishing ideas right here on A Mighty Blaze. This is fantastic. I love everything you just said. Next question from Dr. Marcia Botanica Croyle. She said, what's your writing practice like? Do you write every day? Do you know where your story's going? And she'd also like to know, what advice do you have for writers?
Well, First of all, my process is can be defined rather simply. If you think of writing as a relationship, then you know what to do with it. Writing should not be a job, because I got to tell you what, it ain't worth it because it's too hard. I mean, it's every waking minute practically that I deal with whatever it is. Like right now, I'm writing the next Scarpetta book, and that's all I do every day when I'm not doing something like this right now. So it's got to be something that you've got a relationship with. And if you have a relationship with a person, even if you're really busy, you check on them. If you got an extra hour, you might call them up. In my case, I call up my characters on my keyboard, and maybe they show up, and maybe they don't. But I go and try, because I don't feel good if I don't spend some time on my creativity, on my writing. And I also know, and I know anybody of you out there who writing books or trying to write books or have written many, that they don't write unless you show up and put your butt in the chair. No, nobody's going to do it for you. You got to show up. And so, and that's a good life lesson. I will tell people, show up. You might be surprised what happens. Just show up. Go sit in that chair. Go Google something. Go read some declassified documents be open enough to maybe not be afraid of what you might find out. You know, the original meaning of the word autopsy comes from the Greek autopsia, and it means to see for yourself. And that is the key to everything. You cannot have an original idea, and you cannot create an original character. You can't do any of these things that we all want to do if you don't show up and look for yourself, because you're going to see something nobody else did. When a Scotland Yard investigator told me about Jack the Ripper and took me to those, what was left of those crime scenes way back in 2001, and I said, I might look into this a little bit. It sounds kind of interesting because this guy wrote a lot of letters. I'd like to see his letters. And John Grieve, that investigator, said, well, the person you should look into is Walter Sickert, the painter. Well, I started doing that, and lo and behold, the hair started standing up on end. And I thought, but if I didn't even want to go on that tour that day, because I was supposed to be I was supposed to be I'm trying to think where it was, but I was supposed to be in Scotland or someplace. I was in London. I was supposed to be traveling with people and leaving. But when he asked me to do that, I thought, I can't say no to somebody like this. He is their lead investigator. And if he wants to show me this, even though I'm not interested in Jack the Ripper, I'm going to go. And I canceled my trip and I went. And a lot of people think I shouldn't have, because they think that was a stupid book I wrote. But I'm telling you, that investigation is real, and I stand by it. And I think that's another thing. If you have a passion about something, even if it's something that you don't like, I don't like what Jack the Ripper did, and I wasn't even interested in him. Now, of course, I know more about him than probably anybody you'll ever meet. But I dug into something real, and that's where the ideas come from. It's not. You get surprised by things. We're supposed to be like great big receivers. Writers are the rare breed. We're both receivers and transmitters. If you see a great big antenna dish, this big morning glory looking things you see all over at the space stations, that is what we are. And we got to take a lot of data in, have our hands open like this, and receive information and make observations and look and see and listen and taste and touch if you can, to see what you're dealing with. And then you've got to transmit that out in the form of some kind of story, whether it's a song or a book or a play or a movie or a painting or a poem, because that's what we're here to do. Without stories, we don't know who we are or why we matter or how we're supposed to behave.
Ooh, oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you, Patricia. Now, let's talk a little bit about more about your process, because you said think of it as a relationship, which I've never heard anyone say it. And I love that, because it just clicks in your brain, because we all know how to have relationships. We may not all know how to write books, but we know how to have relationships. We know we got to check on them and check in and tend to them. So, and you said you don't feel good if you don't do that every day. So
yeah, I'd like to, but of course, there are times if I've finished a book and I'm in the very early stages of looking into a few things, I might have a very short period where I'm not doing a lot of writing, but chances are I'm working on edits or revisions from something else. So I'm kind of always at it. It's how I express myself. It's something that I need to do. And my favorite thing is on a regular day, my first thing when I get up, when I've gotten slightly situated, is I go into my office, and morning is my best time. I am a big believer in and sitting down to write when your mind is as uncluttered as you can get it, because distractions are the enemy. And I mean, Dickens, when he was writing in the house that's now this wonderful Dickens house, the museum in London, when he was writing, and the street musicians would come out and start playing in front of his house. And they knew exactly what they were doing, because sure enough, he'd come out and give them money to go the hell away. And believe you me, I've said this many times to my partner, Stacy. I said, you know how much I'd pay that person right now not to play that music when you're trying to focus on something? No offense to anybody, but focusing and lack of distraction, you have to engineer your journey. Think of it as pre-flight. If you're going to go right, you need to engineer your environment that's most suited to you being able to channel that story. And that is different things for different folks. For me, it's quiet and being isolated and really not seeing or hearing anything at all. I don't even care. I don't even usually bother with a view anymore. I just want to be in my own little vacuum with whatever's around me that makes me feel comfortable.
Exactly. Yes. I myself am the same. I have to face a wall. I have to have total silence, total solitude. I can't have any street noise. I'm a sensitive soul. I'm easily twitipated. So I've got to like really focus. So Patricia, does it come easily to you? I mean, do the words just pour out of you? Or are you Hemingway clawing your way for every word?
No, I mean, I would like to be Hemingway in some ways, but in many ways, I'm happy that I'm not Hemingway. I didn't, he was quite a character, but the words come easily to me, and that you can tell that because I talk too much. But what doesn't come in easily is the same thing I think that's hard for most people, which is engineering the story. And, because if you start something, when I first started writing books, the really stupid thing that I would do is I was so anxious that I couldn't wait to get it finished, because I thought, wow, once I get that 400-page whatever done, then I can go back through and sort of play with it. Well, when your baby's born with 3 heads, 2 horns, 5 eyes, and no arms and legs, and a long tail that goes around the state, maybe you should have engineered it better earlier on, because that ain't fixable. And so I had 4 novels that were certainly not fixable, but they were a learning process. And I will also tell you, and it's not just about being a writer, this is about life. Rejection is not necessarily a measure of your worth, because if it were, I'd be the biggest loser you ever met. I mean, my first 3 crime novels with scarpetta in them were turned down by everybody. And then I wrote Postmortem, and that was turned down by everybody. For the better part of a year, I started going around looking for journalism jobs again. I said, I've worked at the morgue for, at that time, 4 years, and I've ruined my life because it's gone nowhere. I gave up journalism, everything. And so that was a very bad time. And nobody wanted to hire me as a journalist. The Washington Post said, we don't have a morgue beat. The Wall Street Journal said, you've been in the morgue longer than you were a journalist. Nobody. So Scribner's finally took Postmortem by a song and a prayer, and then things changed. I was fortunate, but I wouldn't have written that book. That was my 4th try. It should be 3 strikes, you're out. But I said, no, please, I got to try again. I got to try again. But what inspired me is that there were these real serial killings that started in Richmond in the late 80s, and it terrorized the city. And I was sitting right there in the middle of all of it. And I simply asked myself the simple question, what would Scarpetta do if this were her case? And that's how that all took off. And it scared me to death. I was scared. Nobody knew who was doing this in the city of Richmond. And that was born out of something that was real to me. And so that's the other thing you want to excavate is your own self. And if you're involved, like right now, if you're someplace where the pandemic is affecting you in a way that's different from other people, or watching what's going on with your neighbors, or if you're dealing with the riots and protests nearby, this is a time to capture a part of history that hopefully we're never going to live again. And there's stories to be told from this. And this is your challenge. Now's the time to do it. Go mining. Go
Ooh.
mining. You might be shocked what you'll find.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And thank you for sharing the earliest part of your journey, because I mean, my God, you have sold over 100 million books. I mean, have been translated into 36 languages, 120 countries. Postmortem, your first book, your fourth book, which you've just shared, I mean, went on to win the Edgar, the Creasy, the Anthony, the Macavity, as well as the French Prix du Roman d'Aventure Prize, which is the first book ever to claim all of those honors in a single year. I mean, it's incredible.
See, now that we know it was really my fourth book, they should strip me of all those awards, don't you think?
No, I think it's amazing. And I love knowing that it was your fourth book. Thank you.
Well, I just tell people don't get discouraged. And look, right now in particular, don't do things that will get you discouraged. And when I tell you, I hope you'll read Spin, it's not just because it's a sales pitch. It will uplift you. It will make you laugh. It will grip you. It will make you aspire to being higher and better and aiming higher and better than you ever have before, because you'll see what people can do when they put their minds to it. People just like you and me.
Yay. Oh, I love that. I love that. The second book in your Callie Chase series. We cannot wait to read her latest adventures.
Well, I take you into space, you're going to get a rocket ride. And I've researched all that just the way I do everything. So trust me when I tell you it is accurate. And it's about as close as you're going to get to knowing what it's like to go up in a rocket, put on a spacesuit, be up there in a space plane like the Dream Chaser, and have to take out an enemy weapon that's taken out our satellites 22,000 miles above Earth. And so have a nice ride.
Yes. All right, everybody, you heard it here first. Buckle in. It's going to be a great ride. We're all going to be reading this book tomorrow. And I know I can't wait. And we all can't wait. This is so exciting. And what you're saying about, looking around and taking this time to write actually brings us to our next question from Laura. She's saying, are you planning to write about the pandemic? Are you going to work this in?
In a way, because what here, let's talk about the things that happened. Here's what's happened to me during the pandemic. Spin was supposed to have come out in August, but everything's got shut down and delayed because of the pandemic. And I had some time on my hands because I wasn't going to start another Captain Chase that quickly when I wasn't really sure how this was all going to do. Look, I'll be honest with you, I have to see what people want. I mean, truth is,
okay,
I write so that people will read my stories. And so if people like Captain Chase enough, then we will come back to another story. Yes, we will. But for now, what I really thought was, what would Scarpetta do with all this? And I said I wasn't writing anymore. And she didn't want any more written. She's been, I don't know where she's been, but not with me. She's had her fill of me. I can promise you that. So, but then I started thinking, I don't know, this is different. And so what I said, what would happen if I returned her to Virginia, but put her in Northern Virginia, just 5 miles from the Pentagon, where she's back to running the state again, like she did when she was first getting started. Only people hardly remember her anymore. But she's come back and she's on the Doomsday Commission, and we're going to be dealing with, and so I'm going to be dealing with some of the same kinds of things that you're going to be seeing in Spin. But the point is, the pandemic made her want to go back to work. I heard this like, she says, well, if you really want to tell a story, I probably could, I've been in my garden, I'm pretty busy, but maybe. I said, well, look, we need to save the planet. And look at all this crap that's happening everywhere. What are we going to do? You might be able to help. So she's all right, because she knows she can and she will. You watch.
I love how you talk about her as the real person that she is to all of us, and sharing these conversations that you have. She went to her garden for a while.
Remember one thing, all writers, and not just writers, but remember everybody, whatever you do, when you create characters, they create you just as much as you create them. Especially if you do it right. Because if I have to learn to fly a helicopter, if I have to read these science articles, if I have to learn about outer space, if I have to see dead bodies, if I have to do, and by the way, you can just do almost all of that remotely and you can get a pretty good effect of it these days. But if I'm going to do that, then, that's going to change me. I won't be I'm not the same person I was before I started all this. How could I be the same person after walking in Scarpetta's shoes for 3 decades or more and seeing the kinds of things that I've seen? And I will tell you something, for those who get all on fire for UFOs and extraterrestrials, our friends out there that I believe in somewhere, just remember something. Don't be scared. Here's a simple reason why. They could have gotten us already. And more importantly, if you ever want a trip in the cooler, and I'll give you a tour at the morgue, there is nothing any of them would do that's even close to what humans do to each other. Just look at what's happened last week. So that's, but anyway, go out there, try to find it, put on other people's shoes and walk around in them.
Yes, put in other people's shoes and walk around them. And that's what I love about writing, is that it lets us do that. It lets us experience lives that are not our own, the paths not taken or not even dreamed of, and to have those experiences. I love this. I feel so nourished by this conversation.
I also, I have another observation for writers, creatives, better put, because, a lot of us, I didn't do well in science. I'm sorry. I eked by, I could do the normal 2 + 2 usually equals 4. Maybe it doesn't, depends on my mood. But in quantum physics, anything's possible. It all depends, as they say. But the point is, I was really good at some things, but then I was not good when we got into geometry and algebra. And then in a lot of the stuff in science didn't make any sense to me, and I didn't see how it applied to anything. And so I was like zippo interested. Chemistry, none of it. And so I never would have imagined that I could write about these things. But here's a news flash. Some of us who can't do this stuff are actually the ones who tell the story the best.
Ooh, why do you think that is?
It's kind of like, I call it NASA for dummies. We have to turn ourselves into this fusion algorithm where we take all this data and we turn it into something that people can understand. And the ones, and oftentimes the really inventive ones, you might come up with something inventive in writing that somebody goes out and they build that actual thing. And you couldn't draw the blueprint yourself. I couldn't do the math, but I might be able to dream of something. Think of some of the things people have dreamed of, like Gene Roddenberry in Star Trek. My gosh, what a show. Or the Wizard of Oz. Look at these wonderful tales. And it's all about the same thing. We're not in Kansas anymore. We're way off in solar systems away with just our little ragtag crew, whether it's a scarecrow and a tin man or your crew on the Enterprise. But that's kind of where we are now. We're surrounded by a lot of vacuum, and it's just our small little groups, but we can go all kinds of places in our imagination. We can create things that are real and make up those things that aren't, that should be, and maybe make up things that we want to show people why they don't want this kind of thing in our world, a bad person, serial killers or terrorists or whatever it might be, that we write our crime and thriller stories about.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Patricia. This is amazing. Our next question is from Patricia Young. She said, I had a beta reader fall apart when she read a chapter in my first manuscript that was a rape scene that triggered her. She was a mess. I felt terrible that I upset her, but should I leave it out? I feel it's important to give a raw and vivid look at how evil the man is. Do you ever censor yourself?
Well, I do, but in a different way. With fiction, my censor is that I have limits as to what I will show you. If any of you have read everything I've ever done, then you will know that if I have things that you will never see from me because they're that bad, then they must be really bad, right? So that, to me, no, and I don't create things like in Spin, the crimes that are committed. First of all, just remember, this is a little bit campy. I turn the morgue on its head in this book. I turn forensics on their head in this book because these characters can do that. And like I say, DNA doesn't really matter when someone's trying to take over the planet. Who cares about DNA? We don't care about Neva Wrong's DNA. It's because it's not about whether she did something wrong, bad. That's why her name, Wrong, R-O-N-G. It's not that we know that. It's how do you stop somebody that's a biotech billionaire that owns one of the biggest space companies on the planet. So it's, so all of this, well, it's, all to say, it's a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that people will get inspired to not only be taken away from all this misery to say, hey, you know what? And here's a little thought. You know how if you've ever been on a really long flight, like if you've flown to Australia or something like
I have flown to Australia. That's a long one, 21 hours.
Or right. And what you resign yourself to is you can't go anywhere. So you just make use of the time. Well, think of yourself on a spaceship right now. We're on a spaceship. Think of yourself on the Enterprise, going back to our small little crew, and just imagine what could you do while you're on this journey? Because look, it's going to take a while to get there. Maybe we're going to Mars and it may take 8 more months, so to speak. But do something with the time, do something with yourself so that at the end of this, most of all, stay well and stay alive. That's a tall order these days. I tell my friends, I have friends who say, I don't feel like I'm accomplishing anything. I said, if you're staying well and alive and helping your loved ones do that, you're accomplishing a lot. So keep your eye on all that too. We're not in typical times.
We're not in typical times. And thank you for all of that. Thank you. This is
Very well.
so true. This next question from Megan, she said, can you share a surprising or unexpected experience that you had while doing your book research at NASA? Yeah, tell us an unexpected something you came across.
Well, one thing was, yes, I'll tell you that one of my early experiences at NASA Langley, they had this old aviation hangar there that goes back to the Apollo days. This is where people like Buzz Aldrin would, they would learn to spacewalk because this thing is 10 stories high. So they rig up cables and stuff in there. So this hangar's been there a long time. And when I was flying the helicopter in one day, because that's how I'd get back and forth, because I have a helicopter I can rent out of Richmond, and I would fly in and land right in front of the hangar. And this guy came out to meet me one day, and his big thing is electromagnetic energy. He does stuff with satellites, and I call him Magnet Man because he's the one that knows about spectrum analyzers and all the cyber ninja stuff. And so Ken met me, and I was looking at this radome on top of the roof, looked like an igloo. And this is brand new dish antenna they'd had installed up there because they're using it to look at the sun. All the radio waves and things being transmitted by the sun. And no, it doesn't play a song like Here Comes the Sun. So don't think that, okay? We're talking about different kinds of radio waves. But anyway, he said, you want to see that up there? I said, sure. Well, he takes me in the hangar. We start going up and up and up and up, all these metal catwalk stairs. And I'm not liking this at all because you can see through the bottom of them, and the floor with all the planes is getting farther and farther away. And then we get up to almost 100 feet, and oh no, he opens a door and we go outside, and there's just a little platform there. And the rest of the way is an iron ladder on the side of the building.
Oh my God.
And by the way, I didn't tell him I'm afraid of heights. And
I'm terrified of heights. I'm sweating just hearing this.
I'm sweating telling the story, and it's not just my age. So anyway, I started climbing up this thing, and I'm thinking, I'm going to die. I'm going to slip and I'm going to fall 100 feet down. And then it gets worse. You get to the edge of the roof, and now you have to swing your legs over, and it's sloped. And all that's up there's a maintenance carpet. Okay, so you want to be on the maintenance carpet, because if you're on the metal and you start sliding down, guess what's going to happen? So I sort of stood up on the maintenance carpet and pretended that I still had any innards left, that they hadn't all fallen out somewhere. And if I'd had a NASA diaper at that point, I would have put it on for sure. So I'm following this maintenance thing, and we get up there and I go in the radome and do all that. And then when I come down, I told him what a harrowing experience. But here's the thing. If I hadn't gone up there, I wouldn't have got, the radome is very important. When you read spin, Callie has to go up there. And so when you see her climb up there in a snowstorm, you're going to know exactly that I did that too, except not in a snowstorm, thank goodness. But it gave me a great idea for a scene. So that surprised me. I never would have thought of it. I get surprised by so many things. It's you get an idea because something comes out of nowhere that you just wouldn't think of yourself. And I wouldn't have thought when you stand out on a rocket launch pad out at Wallops Island, right, on the barrier island outside of Virginia, with the wind blowing in, and this metal platform. They send rockets up from there to do cargo deliveries to the space station and such. People don't know that. It's called the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, Mars. That is NASA's spaceport off the coast of Virginia. Yes, ma'am, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real thing. And you'll get to see it in this new book, because a rocket blows up that they're sending up there. But anyway, so I went I'm on the pad over there in the wintertime, first time I visited Wallops. And the wind is blowing through all the metal on this pad and is creating the eeriest music you've ever heard. And I would not have heard the sound almost of space blowing through that, so to speak. I wouldn't have experienced it that way had I not been there. And I wouldn't have thought of that either. And so there's so many things. If you can observe, go see for yourself. And if you can't go in person, there's so much video footage of real stuff that you can watch. And I think that you will start becoming quite intrigued by what's available out there, not just for writing books, but for your own, opening your own mind, thinking of possibilities of who you are and what this is all about.
Oh, oh my gosh, I love that. And I am in awe of your bravery. I'm terrified of heights and climbing up that ladder and swinging a leg up. Oh my God, I would have died. You're so brave.
It doesn't bother me being up in a helicopter, but I don't like up on top of buildings and climbing up high stuff. But the helicopter doesn't bother me at all, strangely enough. I'm looking through the chin bubble straight down and doesn't bother me, but I don't like roofs. I don't like balconies. I don't like any of that stuff.
Wow. Well, thank you for conquering your fear of heights and getting that scene for us to read for Captain Callie Chase, because now we're going to know it's exactly 100% true because you did it yourself. So thank you for that. That's amazing. This next question from Alex saying, I love your perseverance and your strength. How do you respond to pre-publication criticism of your work by editors, etc.? Do you ever feel forced to change things which matter to you in order to get the work published? Oh, good question, Alex.
I have been fortunate that when I haven't had people really try to interfere with, the stories that I tell, and going all the way back to, the very early Scarpetta books where in the Body Farm, I didn't know that Lucy was gay. I hadn't seen Lucy since, now that she was a teenager, and she walked in the living room to see her Aunt Kay. And I went, oh, I think well, I did not know that. Okay, now, so what am I going to do with that? Because I didn't decide it. And most of all, how is Scarpetta going to deal with this? So I called my publisher because this was really like this thing was reaching its zenith, the series at this point, like around 94 or so. And I said, I just have to let you know this because I didn't plan on it, but I hope this won't be a problem. And no, there was no problem. And I don't know what I would have done if there was, because I have to write what seems true. Like you talked about the rape scene, we're talking about that earlier, and how, and yes, you have to, it's a delicate balance to show the truth. And I always use this as kind of the golden rule, or the sort of the test for how to know what those limits are, which is simply this: are you condemning or are you celebrating? You know the difference when you're writing a violent scene. If you're celebrating, you're trying to make it kind of sexy. If you're condemning, you're showing the horror without being prurient and maybe violating the victim all over again. It's hard because victims get violated repeatedly because it's a public event. And it is, and that's a terrible thing. When I was a journalist, I can remember, having a couple of people call me up, being upset over something I wrote and calling me bad names and being very hurt by all that. But that it happens, and there's not an easy answer, but just remember empathy. Remember to put yourself in the other person's shoes, and most of all, question the reason why you're given that detail. Make sure there's really, be careful, because these people who read whatever it is you write, words are so powerful.
They're so powerful. Yes. And we have all been reminded of that this last week, especially. The words have meaning, and it matters, and speaking truth matters, and using your words carefully matters. They really do have power. So yes, thank you for that. We have just two more last questions, and we're going to let you go because you've already been so incredibly generous with your time. This one from Molly. She said, how has Scarpetta shaped you personally, other than exposing you to new experiences?
Oh, I think Scarpetta has changed me dramatically. I'm telling you, characters are a weird thing. If if you really give yourself up to it, they are very real in certain ways. And if in other words, I did not try to make Scarpetta like me. I did not try that. I tried to make Scarpetta like Scarpetta. And in doing so, I've become more like her. She would not want to be blamed for that because she doesn't think I'm anything like her. She knows I can't do math. She knows I got no sense of direction. She knows I have a volatile personality. So she, but I've learned at times, you know, Agatha Christie was very shy. And when she would have to go out and do a book signing or something or an event, I've been told, she would come down the stairs and she would say, now I become Agatha Christie. Now I become Agatha Christie. Or Sir Laurence Olivier turning around 3 times before he'd go out on the stage to get in character. So we're supposed to become those characters, not try to make them us. And if you learn to do that in the process, you explore mindsets, you explore talents, abilities. Could be cooking, it could be flying, it could be scuba diving, it could be something that's remote, that's something new that you try that your character's doing, whatever it might be. Resourceful people are going to figure it out. They already are. But yes, I do not believe I would be the same person today had I not spent all this time with somebody that I respect and admire as a character, because she does the right thing. She does the right thing. She may not be perfect, and she's a lot more perfect than I am, but baseline, she does not abuse power, and she cares about the details, and she goes and she looks for herself. And whenever she does that, she finds the answer, and it's always where nobody else is looking because they don't think it matters, without fail. And if people will do that, you will have that same great success.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Oh, Patricia, this is so incredible and so heart-filling. Thank you so much. Asha Yuman's who's one of 2 biracial writing teams in the country, said she's too shy to ask you a question, but she just wanted to say she admires you so much. She's read every single one of your books, and to please tell you, hey girl, hey.
Thank you, and hey girl, hey, right back. And I know what it's like. I'd be too shy to ask a question. I don't have any trouble sitting here running my mouth if you ask me, but if I had to call you and ask you one, I'd probably be really shy too. So you remember that now when I ever do it, okay? You be nice.
You're amazing. And this last question is from Kirstine Stewart Arsenian from the Thrillaholic Psychological Suspense and Mystery group on Facebook with 8,000 members strong, saying she wants to know, do you ever read your reader reviews on Amazon or Goodreads? She said, I was thinking how disheartening it must be for authors to see their work sometimes torn apart, because let's face it, no matter how good it is, there are always those who don't like it and don't hold back. If you do read them, how do you cope with the criticism? And thank you, she says.
I'll be honest with you, no, I really don't read them, but I don't. But that doesn't mean I'm not aware. And sometimes even when people seem to be really mean-spirited or whatever, if, you know, sometimes there may be a germ of truth in it, you know? And so, and maybe what they're criticizing isn't what really bothered them. And so what I try to do is I listen to what other people, I have people, even my own partner who doesn't mind looking at stuff like that. And if there are things I need to know about, I pay attention to it. Many years ago, I had a lot of complaints about, quote, killing off Benton Wesley in the Scarpetta series, Scarpetta's, you know, soon to, you know, eventual husband. And listen, because of that, people yelling at me enough about it, I said, all right, all right, all right. And someone asked me at a book signing, they got it, and they said, are we sure he's really dead? And I said, actually, I don't know now that you mention it, because Scarpetta wasn't there to see it. In first person point of view, she couldn't be there now, could she, unless she witnessed it, and she didn't. So I said, well, I'll be darned. I think that we've all been duped. I don't think he is dead. So thank you, fans, for helping me pull that one out of the fire, because Scarpetta did not like me taking her honey away. She's very much happier now that he's back, I must say.
Wow. So from a reader comment at an event.
So other fans started complaining that there hadn't been any Scarpetta cooking for a while because she didn't have time. So literally, when I was writing Red Mist, which was set in Savannah, Georgia, she never gets home. But I said, okay, she's setting up a kitchen in her hotel room. She is going to cook. She has to. The fans had complained. And so, you know, within reason, I do try to listen. But yes, book reviews, Look, I think any kind of reviews, we live in a world of reviews, whether it's your Airbnb, or it's the car the car dealership that you have, or the restaurant, books, paintings, plays, movies. One of the hardest things about being an artist is that if you're a good one, you're probably sensitive.
Yeah.
And sensitive people, it's hurtful. And of course, people use the weapons that they know will hurt. They criticize your art, which is, that's your heart. Think of it, you know? And so, but you have to shield yourself. It's like wires, put insulation around you. Do not let people put that in you so that you lose the faith that you have to sit there and channel what you need to channel. Do not listen to that ground noise. Don't listen to it. Those distracting signals that it's like someone who wants to psych you out on the tennis court. They make all that noise and bounce the ball too many times and hope the plane flies overhead. Just say no. Just say no. I won't let you. So don't read them. Don't read them. Let people tell you and see how things go. And again, sometimes if you make people really angry, I remember a British book reviewer, remember the person's name, but when Postmortem first came out, he read the book and he wrote in his review that when he got to the end and realized the killer wasn't anybody that we'd met before, he threw the book across the room because he was so angry. Well, I had a lot of people throwing Quantum across the room the last time for the same thing, because it ends the way it ends. I mean, it's not a once upon a time and contrived and conventional. And you'll see when you read Spin why it ends the way it does, because she's about to turn into something else. And what you're really seeing in Quantum is like a prequel. It is the prelude to the mothership story that's about to hit with Spin. And then you understand. And so, but I sometimes when people get really irritated, it may mean that you're onto something too. Postmortem got some people mad because it wasn't your typical mystery. I was writing more about the truth of what violence and all this is. And unfortunately, it often is a stranger, and they don't even come after you because of who you are. It's because of what you are on their radar. That's it. So.
And it's so interesting to hear you say that a lot of people didn't like that book because it's so beloved by everyone I know. And my God, woman, you launched the forensic genre, not just on the page, but on the screen. I mean, you launched an entire genre. You are a legend, and that book is a legend.
Well,
And
thank
everyone
you.
I know loves it. So,
well, I just would tell people, I just say, tell your truth. And sometimes the best story is the one you already know, but you don't realize it's a great story. I mean, I remember one day I was sitting in a screenwriting class. I was a visitor, and I won't go into detail because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but someone was telling me the story about how she got involved in writing the particular screenplay that she was working on. And by the time she'd finished telling me about that, I said, the story is what you did to get this done. I mean, you're missing the whole story. It's right there in front of you. It's you. Because she'd gone to extraordinary lengths that were like bizarre to do this. And so, you can mine your own life. Just remember what Jung said, the Freud's colleague, so to speak, one of his compatriots, said that there's a difference between neurosis and art. And so you don't want neurosis, but you can certainly mine your own experiences, especially if you've been through something unusual. By all means, mine your own database, but you have to know when to stop, when it's not about, just make sure it's not really about you. And you'll know the difference if you really try it.
oh, Patricia Cornwell, legendary author, queen of mysteries, creator of not just the Scarpetta series, but the entire forensic thriller genre. It has been an incredible honor and a delight to host you. What a heart-filling, mind-opening, soul-enriching experience this has been. Thank you so much for blessing us.
Thank you. And I'm wishing you and everybody well. Just know that we're alone together right now. We're going to get through this. You hang in there. And I'm looking forward to some great art coming out of this.
You heard it here from Patricia Cornwell herself. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time right here on Mighty Mysteries. Have a great night.